Do you really think you know the people around you? You probably believe you can tell when someone is toxic, when their presence feels heavy, or when their behavior crosses a line. But what if the real threats aren't so easy to spot? What if the most harmful individuals are not obviously negative, but appear friendly, warm, and may even be part of your own family? While you're focused on protecting yourself from obvious dangers, you might unknowingly leave yourself exposed to something far more subtle and insidious, the unconscious minds of others merging with your own. Carl Gustav Jung spent his life exploring these unseen psychological forces. In his work, The Ego and the Unconscious, he explains that much of what truly drives us lies outside of our conscious awareness. And this doesn't just apply to you, it applies to everyone. That's where the real danger hides. Because when someone is unaware of their own inner darkness, that shadow seeks a host. Often that host is you. Maybe you've never considered this before. But think about how many times you've felt completely drained after speaking to someone. How many times have you been unfairly blamed or treated as the solution to problems that were never yours to begin with? Jung referred to this process as projection, an unconscious mechanism where people assign to others what they refuse to acknowledge in themselves. From that moment, you stop being seen as an individual. You become a stand-in, a mirror, a villain, a hero. But none of these roles reflect who you truly are. What's even more unsettling is that you might not even notice it's happening. You believe you're helping, being compassionate, being the bigger person. All the while, you're getting pulled into emotional struggles that don't belong to you, manipulated by issues you never caused, but that now dictate your actions. And this isn't only about people with bad intentions. Jung was clear. The greatest threats don't come from consciously harmful individuals, but from those who are psychologically unaware. These are people cut off from their inner selves, ruled by masks, past traumas, emotional complexes, and buried desires. They aren't inherently evil, but they are deeply dangerous, and the danger is quiet. It doesn't barge in, it seeps in slowly, through subtle remarks, indirect accusations, long silences charged with emotion, until you begin to doubt yourself. When that self-doubt disconnects you from your own inner world, you've become part of their shadow. You might be experiencing this right now, in a relationship, a friendship, at work, or even within your family. And you might be blaming yourself, asking what's wrong with you. The truth, there's nothing wrong with you. But something is wrong with how you're being used, as a container for someone else's unconscious material. In this video, we'll explore 6 types of individuals that Jung would recognize as emotionally dangerous. These are not people acting with clear malice, but those moved by unconscious drives they don't even understand. And that makes them particularly harmful. We'll use Jung's own words, concepts, and warnings from books like Ion, The Ego and the Unconscious, and Archetypes, and the collective unconscious to help you identify these psychological profiles. But more importantly, we'll invite you to consider this. What if, just maybe, some of these patterns are also at work within you? Ready? Take a deep breath and come with us. But be prepared, because once you understand this, you won't look at other people or yourself the same way again. Picture living with someone who makes you feel responsible for every emotion they experience, who turns your presence into a source of discomfort and holds you accountable for feelings you never caused. At first, they seem delicate, insightful, even soulful. But over time, you realize you're being drawn into a war that's not yours, and you've already lost ground. This is the unconscious manipulator. A person unaware of their emotional wounds, who unconsciously places those wounds onto others. As a way to cope, Jung once said, "What we do not confront in ourselves, we will meet as fate." Often that fate has a familiar face. It could be someone you live with, work with, or deeply care about. The unconscious manipulator is driven by suppressed pain, unacknowledged traumas, and fragmented emotions. Rather than facing these struggles, internally, they direct them at you, treating you as a canvas for their unresolved issues. This type of person lives in a constant state of projection. Jung taught that projection is a natural part of the human mind, but when it's left unchecked, it becomes harmful. In The Ego and the Unconscious, he described projection as a form of psychological blindness, a trap where others aren't seen for who they are, but as representations of the inner parts we reject in ourselves. That's what the unconscious manipulator does. They don't see you, they see a missing part of themselves and react to it as if it were real. These individuals often cast themselves as the victim. Everything is always someone else's fault. If they're angry, it's because you triggered them. If they're sad, it's because you let them down. If they feel inadequate, it's because you act superior. This kind of thinking is so subtle that you start to wonder, was I really being insensitive? Did I actually say something wrong? Am I the toxic one? And just like that, the manipulation works. No shouting, no demands. It's all emotional, silent, and entirely effective. Even worse, these people are they're charming. They radiate charisma and emotional depth. This emotional intensity can become a trap. You start believing you can help them, heal them, understand them better than anyone else. But in reality, you're sacrificing your mental well-being for someone who refuses to engage with their own inner struggles. The more you try, the deeper you fall. Carl Jung warns that these patterns of projection are particularly dangerous. They pull us into symbolic roles: savior, enemy, traitor, parent, everything except who we truly are. Living through these roles means living in illusion. You're no longer seen as a person, but rather as a distorted image shaped by the other's unconscious. The only way to shield yourself from such unconscious manipulation is through awareness. Learn to recognize these patterns. Cut the invisible emotional ties connecting you to their inner narrative. Most importantly, keep asking yourself, are these feelings truly mine, or have they been projected onto me? Unconscious manipulators don't barge into your life. They slip in through your empathy. Once you see this pattern, the next step is recognizing how it hides behind an even more convincing disguise, the persona. This is the mask people wear to appear as something they're not. In the next section, we'll delve into what Jung called one of the greatest psychological risks, the bearer of the persona. Unlike the manipulator who burdens you with their conflicts, the persona wearer can lead you to forget who you are altogether. If this resonates with you, consider subscribing to the channel. Thank you for your support. Not all psychological threats come from extreme behavior. Sometimes they're hidden behind a perfect smile, flawless posture, and an idealized image. In today's world, appearances often matter more than authenticity. Jung saw this as a major problem. When someone becomes overly identified with their persona, the social mask we wear to adapt, they risk losing touch with their true self. The more someone clings to their mask, the more they distort not only their own identity, but also the perceptions of those around them. In The Ego and the Unconscious, Jung says that the persona is not who someone truly is, but who they and others believe them to be. It's a construct shaped by societal, familial, and professional expectations. By itself, the persona isn't inherently harmful. We all use it to navigate different roles in life, as a doctor, a teacher, a friend, but problems begin when someone believes that's all they are. When the mask becomes inseparable from the face, everything genuine, vulnerability, spontaneity, authenticity, gets locked away deep in the psyche. Those dominated by their persona master the art of surface-level interaction. They say the right things, behave appropriately, and avoid confrontation. But behind this polished facade, the soul may be crumbling. The more they uphold their image, the more they suppress their true self, and that inner repression will eventually come at a cost. If you live with someone like this, the effects can be disorienting. You sense something's off, but can't quite put your finger on it. The relationship lacks honesty, depth, and spontaneity. Everything feels staged. Worse, the persona bearer expects you to play along. They want you to stay on script. Expressing strong emotions, doubts, or pain makes them uncomfortable because it mirrors what they've buried within. Jung emphasized that over-identifying with the persona is a major obstacle to individuation, the process of self-discovery and integrating the unconscious. The real danger, he said, begins when someone is hypnotized by the role they play. When they believe they are only what others see, they become trapped by their own image, and their authenticity suffocates behind that illusion. Living alongside such a person can make you second-guess your own sincerity. You begin to censor yourself, to tailor your words, to hide parts of who you are that don't fit the script. Without realizing it, you too start wearing a mask. Being around someone controlled by their persona doesn't just feel false, it becomes infectious. But there's something even more troubling. When someone represses their thoughts, emotions, and desires for too long, those parts don't disappear. They build up. They ferment in the unconscious until they resurface as shadow. That takes us into more dangerous psychological territory, the world of denied emotions that return with force. In the next section, we'll explore the figure of the one who carries a repressed shadow. The person who refuses to acknowledge their own darkness until it inevitably erupts. There's a kind of person who always seems composed, courteous, and balanced. They're consistently moderate and polite, but beneath that calm surface lies a powerful force waiting to break free. Everything they deem inappropriate, shameful, or wrong isn't addressed. It's just buried deep within. This is the essence of someone who embodies the repressed shadow. They strive to be light at all times until the dark side takes over. Carl Jung dedicated much of his work to understanding the shadow. In Ion, he states, "The shadow is everything we refuse to acknowledge within ourselves, but still end up expressing in some way, is what we call the shadow." This isn't about something outside of us. The shadow isn't the evil in the world. It's not them. It's not the enemy. The shadow lives within. It's the anger you won't admit you feel. It's the jealousy you justify. It's the desire you suppress. It's the ambition you hide behind modesty. Whatever you deny in yourself doesn't vanish. It becomes the shadow. And as Carl Jung taught, what you fail to bring into awareness ends up running your life, and you simply call it fate. People with a strong repressed shadow often don't appear threatening. In fact, they're usually seen as respectable, kind, and reliable. But there's something off. They can't stand weakness in others. They react poorly to unpredictability or strong emotions. They seem always on edge, but never actually break, until suddenly they do, and when they snap, it's overwhelming. These individuals are constantly monitoring their emotions. They don't let themselves feel, so they criticize others who do. They don't allow themselves to make mistakes, so they judge anyone who slips up. They become rigid, moralistic, and controlling. But underneath, it's all a way to keep their unconscious in check. Jung explained it clearly. The stronger the persona, the mask we wear, the more the shadow is pushed down. And the more the shadow is suppressed, the harsher its eruption. You can spot this pattern in people who overreact to minor issues, hold grudges for years, or destroy relationships through passive aggression. These are the so-called difficult people, bitter, resentful, overly critical. The root cause, the unrecognized shadow. But here's a key point. The shadow isn't made up of only negative traits. Jung emphasized that it also contains our untapped potential, our hidden talents, creativity, and strength. When the shadow is ignored, all this potential turns toxic. This toxicity spreads, affecting relationships, environments, and especially those closest to the person. Living near someone with a suppressed shadow is like walking through an emotional minefield. You never know when you'll set something off. This repression often stems from a sense of superiority or a strict moral code that uses guilt as a form of control. This brings us to another figure, the moral controller. This person not only denies their own desires, but also makes you feel guilty for pursuing yours. In the next section, we'll explore this type, someone Jung identified as a major block to psychological freedom. They present themselves as virtuous, but hide deep inner conflicts. Not every oppressor carries a weapon. Some wield rules, ideologies, and righteous-sounding phrases. These individuals claim to act from ethics and morality, but end up imprisoning both themselves and others in guilt and shame. Jung knew this archetype well. He believed that when morality becomes a front, it turns into a dangerous form of repression. The moral controller doesn't face their shadow. Instead, they project it onto others and condemn them. You've likely met someone like this, people quick to judge but never self-reflect. They act like moral role models, not because they are, but because they feel they must keep up a certain image. According to Jung, the more someone represses their shadow, the more they project it. And that's exactly what the moral controller does, labels others as sinful, inappropriate, or wrong in order to avoid facing their own flaws. The issue is, unlike regular manipulators, moral controllers truly believe they're helping. They think they're correcting, saving, or guiding others, and that makes them more harmful. Their actions come cloaked in authority, good intentions, and spiritual jargon. You'll hear things like, "It's for your own good," or "You'll thank me later." But this so-called truth is far from objective. It's full of projection. In Ion, Jung discusses Christ and the Antichrist as symbols of wholeness and division. The moral controller believes they embody light, yet ignore their own darkness. They place the blame on others to keep believing they are pure. This makes them dangerous, unable to see the complexity of human nature. If you live near someone like this, you may find yourself constantly feeling guilty, as if you're always in the wrong, even when you're just being yourself. You'll feel watched, judged, and diminished. Worst of all, you might start to believe the criticism. You begin hiding parts of yourself, normal, human, spontaneous parts, to fit someone else's ideal. Their version of morality becomes your cage. This pattern often shows up in families, religions, and strict environments where obedience is mistaken for virtue. Jung saw this moral rigidity as a serious obstacle to individuation, the process of becoming your true self. Where morality becomes extreme, the true self disappears. The extreme moralist isn't truly in search of truth. They seek control. And when they can't control what's around them, they turn inward, trying to dominate the inner world of others. But the moral controller isn't the only one driven by unconscious forces. There's another type, more volatile, unstable, and unpredictable, the complex individual. While the moralist suppresses and projects, the complex person is entirely overtaken by unconscious emotions. They react automatically like a puppet, pulled by hidden strings. In the next section, we'll explore this intense territory, where awareness fades and old emotional wounds take control. We'll meet a kind of person who may warmly embrace you one day and unknowingly hurt you the next. If this resonates with your experience, my ebook Beyond the Shadow might offer real insight. It explains Jung's key concepts and provides tools for deeper self-understanding. You'll find the link pinned in the comments. Imagine living with someone who is, at times, loving, generous, and kind, and then suddenly turns cold, angry, or accuses you of things you never did. A compliment turns into a demand. A joke feels like an insult. A caring gesture is seen as a threat. No matter what you do, it feels like you're walking on shifting ground. This is what it's like to live with someone ruled by unconscious complexes. According to Jung, complexes are self-contained pockets of emotion and memory buried in the unconscious. They can seize control of our awareness without warning. Think of them as fragments of personality shaped by trauma, emotional wounds, and unresolved experiences. In Psychological Types and the Ego and the Unconscious, Jung explains how these complexes distort behavior, prompting reactions not to the present, but to emotional echoes from the past. A passing comment might unknowingly stir up feelings of past rejection or abandonment, and those close by bear the fallout. The person affected by these complexes often doesn't realize they're reacting from old wounds. When they lash out in anger or fall into deep sadness, they believe they're responding rationally, but they're actually replaying unresolved emotions, and this doesn't happen all the time. It comes in waves. Emotional outbursts are mixed with kindness, warmth, even regret. This inconsistency makes relationships with such individuals even more confusing and often addictive. You think, they're not always like this. Sometimes they're amazing. Those moments of real connection keep you hanging on. But they're followed by unexpected emotional storms you don't understand. In trying to keep the peace, you adjust, you shrink. You watch your words, avoid certain topics, tiptoe through interactions, all to prevent triggering the inner chaos. But here's the harsh truth. The chaos isn't caused by you. It's always there, waiting, lurking, ready to erupt with the slightest spark. For Jung, unchecked complexes begin to dominate the psyche. They speak for you, feel for you, act for you. For the complexed individual, this domination is frequent. They may be ruled by feelings of inferiority, abandonment, martyrdom, or persecution, each with its own script, emotions, and demands. The more you try to keep everything calm, the more you reinforce the false hope that these inner forces can be managed. Living with such a person means constantly being on edge. Emotional stability is rare. The present moment is haunted by the past. Over time, you start to absorb these emotional ghosts. You question your own memory, your feelings, your reality. And without noticing it, you begin to be shaped by someone else's unconscious mind. But the most dangerous part is still to come. Because while the complexed person swings between extremes, there's another type who doesn't yell, doesn't accuse, doesn't break down, but quietly drains your energy until there's nothing left. In the next and final section, we'll explore the psychic vampire, the one who feeds on your time, your empathy, your emotional presence, and leaves you feeling empty, worn out, and disconnected. Some people don't crave your company, they crave your energy, and they'll find subtle ways to take it, not through obvious anger or aggression, but through constant needs, quiet guilt trips, or emotional dependence disguised as love. This is the psychic vampire, a deeply draining, silent emotional force that Carl Jung warned about, even if he didn't use that term directly. In Jungian psychology, this pattern represents the unresolved symbiotic relationship, a bond so enmeshed it stunts individual growth and blurs the lines of the self. In his works The Ego and the Unconscious and Ion, Jung pointed out that one of the greatest obstacles to personal growth or individuation is the entangled relationship, where two people stop seeing each other as separate beings and instead merge psychologically. The psychic vampire thrives in this dynamic. They rely on your constant attention, need your comfort every day, want your presence at all times. But behind that constant need is a deep emptiness, one that is not yours to fill. You start with support, then you give more time, Eventually you tolerate emotional mistreatment in the name of compassion, until one day you realize your energy is gone. You no longer know where you end and the other begins. This type of exhaustion goes beyond being tired. It cuts to the soul. You feel like your spirit is being drained bit by bit every single day. Jung spoke of individuals who couldn't stand on their own and latched onto others like emotional leeches. Harsh as it may sound, this is the reality. The psychic vampire doesn't want to grow. They want to be carried. The real danger isn't just the fatigue. It's the fading of your own identity. You start to feel guilty for needing space, selfish for seeking quiet, or cold for wanting distance. That's because the psychic vampire is an expert at switching roles. One moment a helpless victim, the next a manipulative accuser. Soon, your life revolves around avoiding conflict, keeping the peace, and maintaining a bond that's slowly breaking you inside. Jung showed us a way out by bringing the unconscious into awareness, both our own and others. Because the truth is, at some point, you may have played the role of psychic vampire, complex person, or masked yourself behind a persona. No one is immune. We all carry wounds. We all have a shadow. The difference lies in those who face it, and those who pass the burden to others. This video served as a mirror, a reflection of the patterns that bind us, hurt us, and keep us unaware. If you've made it this far, it means you're ready to confront, to understand, and to free yourself. This is the first and most powerful step toward real freedom. It's not about blaming, it's about stepping out of captivity and reclaiming your own inner space. Now, I'd love for you to take part. Share in the comments. Which of these patterns have you encountered, and which do you see in yourself? Your insight could spark awareness in others too. And before you leave, don't miss the next video. It's a vital continuation of this journey into self-awareness, because the more we understand the unconscious, the less power it holds over us. See you there.